I'm actually not familiar with the Newton project. Are you able to elaborate?
Oh, yes. Let me tell you about that. So most people forget that there was a period in time when Steve Jobs was not associated with Apple. So Steve Jobs was ousted from Apple by the man he picked to be his CEO, John Sculley. And there's a very famous story about how Steve Jobs convinced John Sculley, who was then the president of PepsiCo, to leave his job and run Apple Computer. It was considered quite a coup at the time. And Scully was asking, well, I've got a pretty good gig here. Does this make sense? And Steve Jobs looked at him and said, do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugar water, or do you want to change the world? And Scully left and joined Apple. And that was to Steve Jobs' regret, because Scully ultimately ousted Jobs. Perhaps Jobs was a bit immature at the time, but he ousted Jobs. And he had a vision for Apple of tablet computing and pen computing. And so the Newton was the very first attempt at a commercial tablet. It was a fairly large, bulky touchscreen device with a stylus, and you would write on it, and it would theoretically recognize your handwriting. It would learn your handwriting over time, and that is how you would input information to it. And it was a personal digital assistant. You may think that this all sounds familiar because it's actually what the iPhone kind of does.
What year was this?
This was in the early 1990s, and the processors were not up to snuff. They famously failed for a variety of reasons, including the fact that the handwriting recognition was just not good enough. And so the main way they were supposed to enter in their handwriting didn't work. In fact, later on, the personal digital system market did take off when the Palm Pilot occurred, and the Palm Pilot, later the Palm 3, the Palm 5. What they did was they inverted it. Instead of having better handwriting recognition, they trained people on how to write letters in a particular way that was easier for the computers to recognize. That ultimately built up a market, which ended up being wiped out by the iPhone, but was a pretty substantial market for a while.